In this next section, we'll discuss tools, site selection, and tree planting techniques. First, we'll spend some time on the different tools we'll be using on planting day. Then we'll learn about right tree, right place guidelines that affect where we can plant. And finally, we'll talk about the different types of tree stock we'll be planting.
Hello, my name is Ian and I use he, him pronouns. Today we're going to talk about tools and how they're used on planting day.
Friends of Trees provides planting gloves for all our volunteers. Our gloves are professionally washed and sanitized between uses.
Sometimes I like to grab a second pair just in case my gloves get really muddy and wet.
The tool we'll probably be using the most is the spade shovel.
The spade shovel has a point and it's a little bit sharper than the other shovels you'll get. The spade shovel is the tool that you'll use to enlarge or deepen the hole for the tree.
You also get a flat shovel. These are good for scooping dirt off the street, but I don't really use them that much. The hard rake is great for moving mulch or piles of soil while planting. The spring rake, or leaf rake, this is good for cleaning up sticks, tiny clumps of soil out of the grass. I usually use this one after planting to help clean up my site. And of course you'll get a set of pruning shears. It's not so much for pruning the tree, but we use them for cutting plastic ties, cutting off dead branches, and digging for roots. These go together.
This is the stake pounder. It's very heavy and it's made of steel. Before I use the stake pounder, I feel like I'm forgetting something. My helmet. Never pound stakes without a helmet. If you see one of your teammates using the stake pounder without a hard hat, remind them to put it on. You'll want to start by jamming the stake into the ground so it can stand up on its own, and then pulling it towards you. I'll use one arm to lift the stake pounder onto the stake.
You also get stakes for your tree. You'll want to make sure you have 2 stakes per tree and a few extra in case they break.
The tree stakes are 6 feet long, so it's great for spacing yourself out with other teammates.
And then of course, a bundle of twine to secure your tree.
You also get a push broom. The push broom is great for cleaning off hard surfaces like the driveway or a sidewalk after planting.
It's important to demonstrate tool safety out in the field. This means placing shovels face down so that when they get stepped on, they don't bounce up and hit you or your crew member. When carrying your tools, carry the tools in front of you, with the business end, the sharp or metal part of it, down below your waist.
Never carry tools over your shoulder because you can't see where it's going, and you could easily cause an accident that way.
Hands out of the ground when the shovel's around. Make sure that when a shovel is digging, your hands are out of the way, and vice versa. Always wear a hard hat with the stake pounder. Emergency room visits have happened. Okay, now let's talk about site and tree selection. Right tree. The first thing we consider, how big is the planting site? Am I planting in a yard, in a wide planting strip, or in a narrow planting strip? We have lists of trees appropriate for all these spaces. Different spaces can accommodate different sizes of trees. If a planting strip is narrow, that doesn't mean we can't plant a tree. It just means we need to choose from a list of smaller trees with less aggressive root systems. Sometimes when I'm out planting trees, I'll get questions from neighbors or passersby about, why are you planting a tree under those power lines? Won't you just have to cut it back in a few years? And it's important to remember that not all overhead wires pose a conflict with trees. Not like this photo over here. Some, like cable and telephone wires, are okay to come in contact with tree limbs. But some kinds of power lines do limit the size of the tree below, In that case, we just plant a tree from a list of smaller trees. Right place. So this is how we determine where we can plant our tree. There are some places where you can't plant a tree of any size, and that's why we have setbacks from important infrastructure. So what's on the ground? What's underground? We don't want to plant right above a gas line, in front of a stop sign, or too close to an intersection. That would create a hazard. We need to make sure we leave enough room for underground utilities and other urban infrastructure. Each city has a long list of predetermined setbacks to help us find an ideal planting location. Think that long list of setbacks is too confusing, though? How will you know where to plant? I can't memorize all that. Don't worry. The city inspectors figure this out for you and spray paint a white mark on the curb or street indicating where the tree can go. Every FOT street tree planting site has been pre-inspected. That's why we only plant at the white marks. If there's any confusion or something seems off, you can always call your FOT planting coordinator. Most holes have been pre-dug, but sometimes not, and you'll need to dig the hole from start to finish. Look out for utility marks when doing this. Spray paint or flags on the grass. See scribbled spray paint writing? Usually it says no. Don't worry about that. That just means that there's no utility there, and you don't need to worry about it. Utility locates have been requested about a week before planting day. This utility key is on the back of your clipboard, for reference. When planting trees in yards, these locations should be marked with a white flag indicating where the tree will be planted. These locations don't require city inspections, and they're chosen by the tree recipient. But we recommend 15 feet from houses, 5 feet from pavement, and 20 feet from other trees. If you are unsure of a planting location, for any reason, call your Friends of Trees planting coordinator. All right, let's dig into some tree planting techniques. When handling and transporting your tree, make sure to be very gentle with its trunk. That's because young trees have very thin bark, and the living tissues are close to the surface. Most of a tree's trunk is dead woody material called heartwood, which provides strength and structure for your tree, like a skeleton. The active xylem cells, called sapwood, carry water and nutrients from the roots up to the leaves. And the phloem carries sugars back down from the leaves to the rest of the tree. These tissues are very close to the surface, right under the bark. An accidental swipe with a shovel, a bump from another tree container, or a close pass with a lawnmower can easily do damage to a young tree, damaging these essential pathways for water, nutrients, and tree growth. Before planting your tree, you'll look for the first major root under the soil. That's how deep you want to plant. Many trees are planted too deep. When the trunk tissue is buried, it makes it more susceptible to rot, insects, and disease. Make sure the trunk's tapered flare is visible, not like a telephone pole straight into the ground. And when digging, make sure to dig your hole about twice the size of the root ball. This loosens the soil around the root zone, making it easier for the roots to grow and for water to penetrate deeply. The trees we plant are about 6 to 10 feet tall enough to not get trampled in an urban environment. Friends of Trees plants 3 different kinds of nursery stock. There are different tree planting methods for each, but you'll always need to find the root flare before planting. Next, we'll discuss these 3 types of stock and how to plant them. A ball and burlap tree is the most common type of rootstock we plant. A ball and burlap tree is a tree that has been field grown from a seedling until it is big enough to plant. Each B&B tree is dug up during the dormant season, wrapped in burlap, and tied with a rope. When the tree is dug, a large number of its roots are removed. But these regrow quickly with ample watering for the first 3 summers. Let's take a look to see how these are planted.
Planting a tree is fun and easy, as long as you know what you're doing. When you plant with Friends of Trees, our trained crew leaders will show you step by step. But what if you're not planting with Friends of Trees? This video will show you how. Be sure to remove any plastic tags and prune off any broken branches. First, you'll need to know how big to dig the hole. For balled and burlap trees, carefully loosen the burlap and then dig down until you find the top root or root flare. Now dig a hole just as deep as that top root and twice as wide as the root ball. As you dig, keep the grass on one side and the soil on the other. Check for proper planting depth by measuring the height of the first major root against the initial hole depth using a stake or tool handle. Adjust your planting hole as needed to ensure that the top root will be level with the top of the surrounding soil. Score the sides of the hole so roots can penetrate. Now set the tree in the hole using the burlap. If there's a small wire basket, you can remove that prior to putting the tree in the hole. But if it's a big one, you'll want to cut it off once it's in the hole. Now carefully remove the burlap by rocking the tree to one side, tucking the burlap under, and then rocking the tree to the other side and pulling the burlap out. Be careful not to break the root ball during this process. Now straighten the tree and support it with some soil down at the bottom. You can compact this soil a little bit. Now finish adding soil, breaking up any big chunks, and don't compact too much. We use the grass and any remaining soil to create a berm around the outside. If you can get rid of the grass, that's even better. Now add 5 to 10 gallons of water, letting it soak in slowly. Then add a couple inches of mulch, but make sure the mulch doesn't touch the trunk of the tree. At Friends of Trees, we stake every tree we plant. This protects it a little bit from cars and lawnmowers and holds it upright in any heavy windstorms. When we tie the knot, we make sure it's very loose, giving the tree a little bit of flexibility so it knows that it needs to grow a strong root system. At Friends of Trees, we add a sticker reminding the homeowner how to maintain the tree and telling the neighbors what type of tree it is. And now there's only one last step: dance.
Container-grown trees are also very common. These are pots filled with a lightweight growing medium, usually a mulchy, composty material, so they're lighter and easier to transport. Container trees can be stored in the containers or moved and shipped all year round. Container trees retain their entire root system when they're planted. The one drawback to container trees is the potential for the tree to develop circling roots and become pot-bound or girdled later. Let's go check in with Hallie to see how these are planted.
I'm Hallie. I use she, her pronouns, and today I am going to show you how to plant a containerized tree. First things first, I'll put on my gloves and face mask. Step 1. Remove all tags, plastic ties, and wraps before planting the tree. Step 2. Remove the tree from the container. First, lean the tree on its side. You can use your knees or your heel to loosen the sides of the pot. If you look closely, you will see the one major downside of planting container stock. When a tree roots reach the edge of the side of the container, they don't stop growing. Instead, they'll begin circling around. Step 3. Loosen the root ball to prevent girdling roots. We are going to loosen these roots so they don't continue to grow in that pattern and eventually strangle the tree. I'm using my pruning shears to loosen the roots in soil. Using the handles to dig preserves the sharpness of the blade. Step 4. Make sure to remove excess topsoil and excavate down to the first major root. The first major root is larger than these adventitious roots. These roots are not structural. Instead, they form because of added layers of top mulch over time. You can actually prune off some of these adventitious roots since they'll be above the soil level. The root flare, or root collar, or trunk flare is the area at the base of a tree where the tree transitions from trunk and bark tissue into root system tissue. This creates a taper that should always be exposed. Step 5. Determine the required depth for the hole. I'll use an upside down stake to get a rough measurement of how deep the root ball is. I'll use wet soil to draw a line on the stake at the height of the major root. That's how deep we want our hole to be. I'll place our measuring stake into the hole and then place a second stake across the hole to see how deep it is. Looks like we've made this hole too deep. I'll add a little bit more soil. Now I will pack down the soil so your tree doesn't sink after planting. Looks just right. Step 6. Roll the tree into the hole. Step 7. Refill the hole with soil. I'll use the upside down sod to build a berm, a ring of soil around the tree to help accumulate water for the tree. Step 8. Water in the tree to help settle the disturbed soil and remove any air pockets. Step 9. Stake the tree. The stake should be straight, parallel to the tree trunk. Always make sure to wear your hard hat. I try to get the stake at least a foot into the ground. Step 10. Secure the tree with twine. I don't want to strangle the tree, so I will leave a 2-finger gap for my loop. I'll tie a simple overhand knot. I'll make a loose half tie on one side to help center the loop while tying the opposite side. Now I'll return to the first stake and finish the knot. Let's add the tree tag sticker. This helpful tag reminds the new tree parent of some basic tree care instructions, and it reminds them and passerbys of the variety of the tree. All done!
Bare root trees won't be ready from the nursery until February, so we won't be planting these until later in the season. These are grown in the field until they reach planting size. Then a large excavator digs up the trees, and the soil is shaken off the roots in the field. Bare root trees are easy to transport because they're extremely lightweight. However, their exposed roots are very sensitive and they must be kept moist before planting. We'll review the details of planting bare root trees later this winter. Alright, that's it for tools, site selection, and tree planting techniques. Next steps are to submit your training review and answer a few questions. Then we'll reach back out to invite you to sign up for your planting events. Thanks so much for listening and for your time taking this training. We can't wait to get out there and plant with you. Hope to see you soon.